Well, hi, everybody. Welcome back to our Points in the Paint podcast. It is episode 7. Dave Fleming, Sean Farnham with you again, presented by... Hell of a good day.
Let's go.
I've had a lot with the Super Bowl this week and whatnot. It's been a lot of hell of a good dip week for me, but it was a big hit at the Super Bowl party, Sean.
There's just no doubt. I brought mine to my Super Bowl party as well, and I went swimming in it. I mean, I continue to tell you, last week I wanted to bathe in it. This week I wanted to swim in it. So good. So good.
All right, lots to talk about this week. We're going to recap the games from last week, including a notable element of some Gonzaga basketball history. We've got 2 guests, Sean, this week.
2! The podcast is expanding. You know, I mean, that's the one thing that you and I will both acknowledge, and is that the amount of people listening to this podcast is growing every week. It's one of the fastest growing podcasts in the history of podcasts. At least that's what I'm telling myself. But Dave, you were there at USF, and you called me up and was like, Sean, so many people are coming up and listening to the podcast. So first of all, anyone that's listening, thank you. Appreciate it. Welcome to the show. Hopefully you're entertained. Hopefully we make you laugh and you have a hell of a good time.
I don't want to exaggerate, but there were 20 people who came up to me at that game at USF and said, "Hey, I love that podcast. Keep doing the podcast." So anyway, a little feedback is not bad.
Now we just need to make sure that you give them Stu Jackson's email address and that they can each individually tell Stu how amazing Dave Fleming and Sean Farnham are together.
The thank you note to the league office. So anyway, it has been gratifying. We have been getting some listeners. So our 2 guests, we have Austin Rapp from Portland, great freshman year for the Pilots, and Joe Lunardi from ESPN. It's February 11th, so we're going to be talking NCAA tournament coming up real soon. So Joe's going to weigh in on that, and then we'll have a quick look ahead to the games this week as well. Can we start, Sean? I did want to salute a guy who was on the podcast a couple weeks ago, Ryan Nembhard, who, I mean, you think about Gonzaga hoops and the history that they've had, and especially the history at the point guard position. I mean, you give Step and Dickow and Santangelo and Pangos and Perkins and Suggs and, John Stockton. And Ryan Nembhard has already set the single-season Gonzaga assist record. Already, he's 40 away from Emmett Naar's all-time single-season WCC record. And I just wanted to salute Ryan Nembhard. That is an impressive record, and he's averaging just under 10 assists per game. Who knows? He might finish the year over 10 assists per game. He's just having a remarkable year.
He is. And you know, you think about the way the schedule breaks out, too, is there's a good chance that St. Mary's game, he might be able to break that record in that game at home in Spokane with you and I on the call.
You're right. That could be the day.
And that would be just tremendous for you and I to be there. And, you know, listen, during the St. Mary's game, like some people were hitting me up on the social media channels as they were. Like, oh, you keep talking about Nembhard being such a great guard. We're losing. Why are you focused on that? Because he's that good. And without him, Gonzaga would be completely lost at the offensive end of the floor. And those aren't my words. That's Mark Few's words. So, you know, I'm going to celebrate players that are doing near historical things. And what he's doing right now is putting on such a display of unselfishness, timing, setting up his teammates and making them better. To me, he's as elite as a passing guard that we have in all of college basketball. He's a finalist for the Cousy Award. There's some other great guards. It's a really strong year for guards across the country. You can't tell me there's a better guard in the country right now in college basketball at distributing the basketball on a consistent basis. His assist-to-turnover ratio is outstanding. Without him, again, that offense would really be struggling right now. With him, they're hanging on in a very deep and difficult WCC this year.
In a lot of ways, the spirit of Bob Cousy himself is embodied in Ryan Nembhard. Because you're right, the award now, and I don't blame it, the Heisman Trophy's this way. Lots of awards sort of morph into something maybe different than what they were intended to be. And the award now maybe encompasses more than what it originally was supposed to. I think he's the best passing point guard in college basketball.
And the numbers support that, right? I mean, leads the nation in assists at 9.8 assists per game, second in the nation in assist to turnover ratio. Like, I mean, there's a lot of markers that he can check off. And when you and I are on the call, I know we're going to be talking about it a lot when we get up to Spokane, and we'll talk about it a lot in Las Vegas too. So tune in. We're going to show you all the brilliance of his passing, because he had one the other night on Saturday against Pacific that was just silly. I mean, it was like first half, no window whatsoever, straight line bounce pass through the middle of the key, perfect right into the hands. I mean, he just drops dimes. I mean, he puts in. There is no window that's too small for him to thread it. I mean, that's how it feels when the ball's in his hands.
My favorite play in basketball. A great pass is my favorite play in basketball, and nobody does it more than Ryan Nembhard. Sometimes I unofficially name my team of the week on this podcast, which is sort of ridiculous, but
It's the Dave Fleming team of the week. Wah wah.
we don't have any theme music yet. I'm giving it to the USF Dons. San Francisco got, you and I talked about it last week. They have been looking for a breakthrough win. They've piled up all these wins. They've had these good teams over the last 5, 7, 10 years, and they just have so rarely been able to break through against the Zags or the Gales. And they finally did it on Thursday on the Hilltop. It was a really cool scene. They backed it up, by the way, by going down to LMU. We know how well LMU's been playing, and it wasn't easy, but they got a win on Saturday against LMU. So the Dons of San Francisco, they are my team of the week.
Dave Fleming's hell of a good team is San Francisco Dons. I was texting Chris Gerlofson on Sunday about the win. I congratulated him and said, didn't want to reach out after the St. Mary's game because I wanted to allow you guys to process that. And I know there was the next business at hand was a road trip and a road game. And I said, road games are gold. And he very frankly responded back to me and said, Thursday was huge, but killing LMU by even 1 point was going to be even bigger for our team. And it was, because the thing about it is when you have a huge win like that hasn't come for your program in such a long period of time. We saw this a year ago with Santa Clara, when Santa Clara hit the buzzer beater and knocked off Gonzaga. And the next game, I think they played St. Mary's and they were down by 52, like in the first half. And I thought that San Francisco showed some real toughness to go on the road and win that game against LMU. And look, they're sitting in a position to potentially be playing on Monday night instead of having to play on Sunday in the WCC tournament. And this week, obviously, coming up will be a big part of that. But Chris Gerlofson has done an outstanding job with this team. Those guards are really dynamic, as we saw against St. Mary's, and they will be trouble for anybody that takes them on in this conference for sure.
So true. I mean, they beat St. Mary's with Malik Thomas having a quiet game. I didn't know that was possible. Ryan Beasley, shout out to him. He was awesome on defense in the second half. And Ryan Beasley's not usually associated with defense, but he played great on Marshallonis. And it was overall, it was a really cool scene. It's an historic gym. You and I have been in there many, many times over the years. They have passionate fans. They have great history. They've won national championships. They're the school of Bill Russell. Bill Cartwright was there. The new mayor of San Francisco was sitting in the front row, standing up and cheering for the Dons. It was a night to celebrate San Francisco basketball.
Wait. Hold on. I thought you were the mayor of San Francisco.
I will say this. He did come up to me, Daniel Lurie, who's brand new on the job. He did come up to me at halftime and took a selfie with me. So
okay. So you still hold status over the mayor's office. I just want to make sure.
I definitely took more pictures after the game than he did.
All right, good. As you should. You are the face. You are the face that runs the place when it comes to WCC hoops, my friend.
It was a fun night on the Hilltop, and maybe we got to take our break here, but we'll talk about St. Mary's too, because they did bounce back and did something pretty impressive on Saturday night themselves up in Corvallis.
Yes, and they're asking us to go to break, so stop talking.
Joe Lunardi of ESPN when we come back. All right, we're back on our Points in the Paint podcast, talking WCC hoops. Dave Fleming, Sean Farnham, brought to you by Hell of a Good Dip. And it's our pleasure to welcome in our first guest of this week, ESPN bracketologist, our friend Joe Lunardi. We'll dive right into it, Joe. Your time is very valuable this time of year. You are a busy man. Let's start with the team, Joe, at the top of the WCC standings. The St. Mary's Gales having another really good year. Where does St. Mary's stands as far as the NCAA tournament picture goes?
Here's what's really interesting, guys. The Gales 2 weeks ago numerically didn't have any quad one wins. They were still a Randy Bennett team, still very good, but resume-wise, a little bit light. Well, what do you know? They've played a number of quad one teams in the last 2 weeks. Beating Gonzaga, of course, at home. At Santa Clara turned out to be a quad one win. At Oregon State, at least for the moment, turned out to be a quad one win. A narrow loss at USF after thumping them in Moraga. And what do you know? A Nebraska win from way back in December, late November on a neutral site has bubbled up into that quad one category. So if the season ended today, the Gales would be a lock in the 7 or 8 seed range. Now we'll see what happens down the stretch, but Forney would know as well as anybody. Historically, these Randy Bennett teams tend to get better over the course of a season, and in more recent seasons, it's been offensive improvement, and we're seeing that.
You look at the upcoming schedule, a couple more opportunities for some big wins moving forward, big wins in the WCC, including a trip up to Spokane. What is the ceiling for them? You mentioned a 7 or 8. If they were to win the regular season, let's say lose in Spokane, but then win the WCC tournament and beat, and get another quad one victory, maybe 2 quad one victories because the depth this year is good in the WCC. Let's say they get at least one more quad one victory. What's the ceiling look like for them being a regular season, postseason champ and getting more quad ones?
Well, I wouldn't have thought that last year could have resulted in a 5 seed. Of course, it was their 3rd straight 5 seed in a row, which is an accomplishment at another level for another time, I suppose, for bracket nerds and historians like me. But, when I look at it, Forney, it's more a question of not having a bad loss than adding another big win. I think any reasonable committee member would know that not just this St. Mary's team, but St. Mary's teams in general are good enough for a solid single-digit seed. So, yeah, I guess a 5 is possible. I mean, they got one last year after starting 3 and 5. I think more like 6 or 7 is likely, though, mostly because of the way the nation is shaking out around them.
How about the Zags, Joe? Let's talk about Gonzaga a little bit. This time of year, we're used to maybe a different type of conversation with them. Where does Gonzaga sit?
Well, we'd have to go back 2 years to have like a normal Gonzaga type of conversation, meaning, number 1 seed on November 1st, number 1 seed on March 1st, headed west wherever the closest spots are, and we'll see you in the Sweet 16 Elite 8 and take it from there. A year ago, of course, they were just getting on their surge. Late January, early March, and we know where that ended up. Another second weekend for Mark Few and company. This year they certainly played Gonzaga's schedule, but at least at the very top, they haven't won as many of those games. I think last time I looked, they were 2-6 in quad one, and they'll certainly get another crack at St. Mary's. And, history would suggest that those two will split their regular season meetings, and the Zags will get that. I have them a seed line behind the Gales at this point as an 8, which could send them almost anywhere geographically, likely Lexington or Raleigh, because that's where the 1 seeds are going to be. So Gonzaga would have earlier travel than they're accustomed to, but they're as likely to win 2 out of 3, let's say, from the Gales and move up. I think their ceiling is also probably in the 6 or 7 range. I don't think they can get above that at this point.
WCC has been a multi-bid conference for a long, long time. It appears, again, that that's going to at least be the case with the 2 teams that we've already referenced. If you were looking at depth of this conference and net rankings, there's a lot of teams that are in the 60s that have the opportunity with some scheduling to move up. San Francisco clearly made a big splash last Thursday with their win over St. Mary's at home. Then winning on the road at LMU was not a small task in itself. What would it take for a team like San Francisco to join the conversation? They've got 2 games still remaining with the Zags, and then, of course, the WCC tournament.
I think the Dons are dangerous. Whether they're consistently good enough, I'm not yet sure, but the resume doesn't know that, and they have to win one of those Gonzaga games to be sure of moving into the serious part of the conversation. And I think what you're alluding to, Sean, is not been discussed enough, and that's been the impact of Oregon State and Washington State on everyone's numbers to this point. St. Mary's goes Saturday night to Corvallis and wins by 20 and gets a low-end quad one game against a team that's in the middle of the league standings, right? Like that would never have been the case, that you get a quad one game in February by winning a game in the middle of this league. And that's not a knock, it's just reality. Even when BYU was in the league, it was still more top heavy than deep. So the depth comes from the two, plus Santa Clara and San Francisco being, borderline bubble teams now on a pretty consistent basis.
Good place to end. I think, Joe, you got a lot of work to do over the next many weeks. We'll be hearing from you. Hopefully we get a chance to talk with you again. We always appreciate your insights.
You bet, guys. Thank you.
Joe Lunardi of ESPN. You can catch him. Well, you can catch him everywhere on ESPN this time of year. We'll come back and talk to Austin Rapp right after this. All right, back now. Our Points in the Paint podcast continues. Dave Fleming, Sean Farnham, presented by Hell of a Good Dip, and a guy who's having just a terrific freshman year for the University of Portland Pilots. Freshman star Austin Rapp joins us. Our first chance to catch up with Austin. Congratulations on your early success. I know your college career is just getting started, but how has college hoops been for you in your first season?
I think it's been amazing so far. It's pretty beneficial to come over here and obviously fit in pretty well into the system, and just being able to kind of the coaching staff over here at Portland's just been really good with me, just to kind of give me free will to just play basketball. And I've been around college basketball. My dad played college basketball. I've got a brother also and a sister who are also playing college basketball at the moment as we speak. So I think I've been around it enough to where I've kind of got a gist of it now to actually be playing, and having some sort of an impact is pretty cool.
You talk about your family. Let's stay on that for a second. What was it like growing up in a household that I got to imagine was pretty competitive?
It was. I'm sure my parents didn't like it too many days when we had a little ring outside and we'll play 2-on-2. So I have an older sister too. We'd play 2-on-2, boys versus girls, and every day it would end up with someone crying. No matter it was me, my sister, it wouldn't matter. One of us, there'll be a fight and we'll start crying. We'll run inside. And mom and dad didn't like that side of it, but it was super cool to have 3 other siblings that were also really talented in basketball, and to kind of look up to them a little bit. And it was really cool to just compete with them every day and at the house. As much as my parents didn't like it, the fighting side of it, I'm sure they loved that we're competing and playing basketball.
Austin Rapp is our guest. You can tell I did a lot of detective work. If you're listening to this podcast, you can tell Austin grew up in Australia. Do you call a hoop a ring?
Yeah. Sorry. Yeah. A ring. We call it, the slang still. People, I'll be saying stuff every day, and they're like, "What's that?" I'm like, "Oh, sorry." So a hoop is a ring. Yes, it is. But I get confused on that all the time. But
Now help me, Austin. Dad played college basketball, UC San Diego, where he's in their Athletics Hall of Fame. He was a really good player for UC San Diego. Did your dad grow up in the United States?
yeah, so he grew up all his life in the United States, and then went overseas to play for the Albury Bandits which is like a little small league, country league down in Australia, and that's where he met my mum. So I'm actually a dual citizen, so I've actually got both passports, which comes in pretty handy.
Oh, that's good for traveling the world. And
Oh,
so
very good.
grew up in Australia. Your dad doesn't have the accent. Your mom obviously does. Because you're there, it's just automatic. This is the first time I've ever talked to you. I didn't know what you were going to sound like.
No, 100%. My accent. People say my accent's pretty strong, but obviously I can't really hear it. But I think it's my brother's actually starting to get an American accent because he was born in America. So because he's been over in the States for so long now, he's starting to get a little tang of American, which my mom hates. But my dad loves it a little bit.
Talk about growing up in Australia, because obviously there's a rich basketball tradition there. Just overall, I mean, in the WCC, you think about St. Mary's and obviously the rich history of so many Aussies playing for their program, whether it be Patty Mills, Matthew Dellavedova. Go outside of that spectrum, obviously Ben Simmons was a huge sensation when he was a freshman at LSU. Who were the people that you watched growing up, and how did you fall in love with the sport of basketball in Australia?
Yeah, I think obviously the basketball community in Australia is continuing to develop as we speak at the moment. Like we've got obviously the Next Star program that is happening with the NBL and guys getting drafted. You know, Giddy and Dyson Daniels kind of proven the pathway from Australia. And I think growing up, I used to watch a lot of like Aaron Baines and Andrew Bogut and kind of those big guys, just those bruisers down in the paint battling and just playing really hard. And I think that I was always, as a kid, I was running around the basketball stadium left, right, and center. Like my parents had to chase me out of the gym. So I think I've always kind of loved basketball, and it's kind of been easy for me to get into it just because as soon as I was born, my siblings were playing already. So I think that came easy. But growing up in Australia I loved it, and I couldn't think that growing up and just watching Baines and watching those guys go to work and watching the Boomers, watching Delhi, watching Patty Mills, watching those guys, especially Patty at the Olympic level, was pretty cool.
Yeah, good stuff. How do you describe your game, Austin? Like, describe your own style of play for us.
I would like to say I'm a big guard. I'm a 6'10". I play forward, but I feel like I can handle the ball and kind of vary from either 2 through 5. I stretch the floor. I shoot it pretty well. I like to get guys involved. I like to pass and contribute. I think defensively, I've got longer arms than people deceive me as, so I get a few blocks here and there, which is just because my arms are so long and I'm not athletic at all. So for me to just have my arms and just get those block shots is something that definitely helps. But yeah, I think I'm just a stretch 4, stretch 5, and can kind of get my teammates involved and shoot the ball pretty well.
Austin, you may not know this, but this podcast is sponsored by Hell of a Good Dip, which also happens to be the Hell of a Good Dip WCC Men's Basketball Freshman of the Week, an award that seemingly should be named after you this year. What has that been like, getting these honors as frequently as you have? I know this season's been tough as far as getting wins as a group and as a unit, but the opportunity to be recognized by the league's coaches and whatnot, to be taking home that award as consistently as you have, what does that mean to you?
It's pretty special. We have some pretty talented freshmen in our conference, like Mikey Lewis from St. Mary's, Tara Riley from San Fran. We've got a few on our team, a few good freshmen on our team too. So it's pretty cool to get that. Like, you know, every Monday the award comes out, and I'll be lying if I said I wasn't looking to make sure to see if I'd gotten it. But it's pretty cool. But just to
wait, Dave, did you catch what he did right there? Did you see? He said he wanted to take a look, but really what he wanted to say, he stopped himself, is to make sure that he got the award. Like, did you hear that? Like, I heard him say and then he stopped because he was going to say to make sure he got the award. I'm not mad at you. I'm not mad at you. Your numbers support it, my man. Your numbers support it.
No, it's been pretty cool, and just to like get the recognition from the WCC in itself. It's a proven. I honestly think it's the 6th best league in the whole college basketball right now. So I think to get the award a few times is pretty cool. And obviously it would help to get some wins along the way, which is probably the most important thing for me, is just trying to help my team win. And if me helping my team win gets me some awards along the way, it's pretty cool.
Really nice to get to know you. Keep it up. Congratulations on all your success. We can't wait to see you in person.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Thanks for having me on, guys.
Austin Rapp of Portland having a hell of a good freshman season for the Pilots. Final segment of our Points in the Paint podcast right after this. All right, welcome back to our Points in the Paint podcast. Dave Fleming, Sean Farnham, talking WCC hoops. It's episode 7. Gosh, it's the middle of February already. We're past even the heart of the conference season. We're getting ready to come down the home stretch. We have a few minutes left, Sean. By the way, Austin Rapp, really enjoyed getting to know him a little bit.
Like if we're going to judge out the guests today, quality of entertainment value, Lunardi, Rapp, which one you leaning? I'm going with the Aussie.
Well, first of all, the accent is an unfair advantage.
True. Facts.
To him talk about it no matter what. I would enjoy listening to him talk. He's got a really cool personal story. He does. I'm sure Joe does too, but Joe's just talking bracketology. So
Yeah. He's talking numbers.
I'm good. Look, Joe's time is valuable. I'm glad he took some time for us. So
I agree.
appreciate him being on. All right, let's look ahead to some games this week before we sign off. And Tuesday night is a big game. In fact, Joe is going to be there. Lunardi is going to be in Moraga for Santa Clara and St. Mary's. And look, the first game was all Gales in the second half. I am sure that Herb Sendek has reminded his team that, gentlemen, they outscored us 30-0 over a 13-minute stretch in our gym. And look, it's college basketball. That result does not have to repeat itself. So we'll see what happens.
I would say this, though, the fact that this game is at St. Mary's and just how good the Gales are at home, and the fact that the Gales don't want to find themselves in a situation where they show up to Spokane and they lose a game and all of a sudden they're sharing a title potentially. You know, I mean, because of that loss on Thursday, I think that what we saw over the weekend was a sharpened knife of St. Mary's to go on the road and do what they did against Oregon State that was 13-1 at home on the season. Their lone loss only to the Oregon Ducks, I believe, if I'm not mistaken. And for them to be able to go up there and win that game in the fashion in which they did showed me that this was a team with great leadership within that locker room, which is not a surprise when you look at Augustus and Mitchell and Luke Barrett, that those three guys would get that group back on task. And they came out with a concerted effort. I anticipate protecting their home court is really important to this group. We've seen it in the past when you can go undefeated on your home floor in WCC play, what that means. And I think I would give St. Mary's an edge in this game. Santa Clara needs it, though. We didn't get into that a whole lot with Joe Lunardi, but the metrics put Santa Clara in a position right now where if they were able to win this game on the road, that is a quad one victory, big time quad one victory for Herb Sendek. And all of a sudden now, how their metrics will be viewed is completely different because, again, when you look at the metrics, you don't just look at what's going on in the WCC. You have to look at what's going on in all those other bubble teams. The fact that North Carolina and Pitt over the last 2 weeks have split their 2 games, that's not great. For the ACC, they would have liked to seen somebody sweep those games. The fact that Wake Forest came out and swept Stanford and Cal, that's good for Wake Forest and their potential of getting the NCAA tournament. So that's what you're looking at if you're Santa Clara. It's not necessarily, again, just your own bubble that you're in. You have to take a larger perspective and looking at all those teams, Arizona State, the UCLA's, where are they at? How are they doing? Are they winning games? Are they losing the bad game? To Joe's point, and Joe, this is a good point. It's not just winning the big game. It's not having the bad loss. It's not having that loss that sets you back. That's what was so important about San Francisco beating St. Mary's at home and then going on the road to beat LMU. Now, LMU is not a bad loss. LMU, Stan Johnson's team, has been really good all year long. But the perception from a national media perspective, from a tournament selection committee, they want to see that consistency, that you have no drop-off, that you're able to execute the way that you need to do on the road.
All right, I have 3 lightning round questions for you. You ready?
Yes.
Before we finish up today?
Yes.
Augustus Marciulionis. This 2 games in a row where, especially in the first half, now they won in Corvallis, like you said, and it was a very impressive win. Very impressive. They gave up 49. I think the Zags gave up 96 when they were in Corvallis. Holding that team to 49 points at home is studly. But should I be, as a St. Mary's observer, is it a good thing or is it concerning in any way that 2 games in a row they've leaned so heavily on Marciulionis to be the scorer, to be the shooter? That hasn't been their path.
It's a bad thing, Dave. It's a bad thing. And I thought that on Thursday night when he had 17 at the half, I said, this is not good for St. Mary's. St. Mary's needs balance. They need 3, 4, 5 guys between 9 and 13 points. And when they get that, that's when they're really executing. That's when they're really playing well. They need Luke Barrett to get his 8 and 9 points. They need Mitchell Saxon to be above 10. They need Jordan Ross to be around 9 points per game. They need Marshall Onis to be at 13. And if you have that, all of a sudden you're like, okay, you're in a good spot. And I think that's going to be really key to them. I mean, because remember, the tournament is not that far away. And this is a friendly reminder for all of those listening to this podcast. The tournament, March 6th through 11th. It's going to be absolutely fantastic in Las Vegas, the Orleans. The format's different this year. I mean, we're going to be there Sunday, Monday, Tuesday. No off days on a Sunday like we've seen in the WCC tournament for some years. Students need to show up, need to show out. Administration needs to do their part. But this tournament, I think, is going to be more wide open than we've seen, Dave. And I think St. Mary's, if they want to win the tournament championship this year, they need to find better balance within their offense. And they can't just rely on Marshall Onis.
Good. Well said. You and I are going to do a little Las Vegas travel guide for people who want to come down to the.
Should we give them all our spots?
We're not going to give them all, but we're going to give some either next week or the week after that to give people time to plan, because we do want to see a lot of WCC fans down there. All right, thoughts on Thursday? To me, the game of the week in the league. A big game in Moraga on Tuesday. Big game in Spokane on Thursday. I'll be there. San Francisco at Gonzaga. Can the Dons keep it going?
Yes, it can. Will they? I think that's, again, you're talking what would be a massive quad one victory in Spokane. But the guards of San Francisco can be disruptive defensively. We saw that in the game in particular against St. Mary's. They can also shoot it. And they won that game against St. Mary's, as you pointed out earlier, without Malik Thomas really going off. Now, if they're going to go try to win in Spokane, you can't have anybody have an off night. Everybody's got to hit to average, and somebody's got to be above average. I don't care who it is, but you got to get somebody that goes 4, 5, 6, 7 points above average, and then everybody else hit their average, and you've got a chance to win there. Gonzaga is elite on their home court. Their interior presence, I think, will cause problems for San Francisco, though. I think when you look at the combination of Huff and Ike, and that's where the Zags can kind of wear them out on the inside. And they also are playing with a little bit of an edge right now. If they want any chance at a share of the title, they can't drop another game. Absolutely cannot drop another game the rest of the way. And so now you've got that sense of urgency that maybe they didn't have at other points in time over the course of this season.
All right, final thought, and I was going to end it right there, but Lunardi brought up a point, and I thought it was worth getting your opinion on. Because the last ESPN Network game of the week is Washington State going to St. Mary's. St. Mary's beat them in Pullman. Washington State is struggling in this league right now. And look, they had some quality games in the non-conference. Oregon State is in the middle of the pack. That was the point Lunardi was making. You and I watched for years. BYU waltzed into the WCC thinking they were going to win the league 10 times in a row. They never won the league. Did they ever finish second? I don't know. I mean, maybe one time. And this is not a knock on Oregon State. This is not a knock on Washington State. I wanted to make the point with you of what we have seen over these last many years, where these teams assume they're going to come here and just pile up wins, and it ain't that easy.
No, because it's a hell of a good conference. And yes, you can go across this country, and this is where I think we have to make sure that we protect college basketball. Because you can go across the country and you can play I can pluck a team that's in the middle of the ACC and drop them into the WCC. And I promise you, if that was, Pitt or North Carolina this year, they'd be taking losses to San Francisco. They would be losing on the road if they had to play inside those environments at Santa Clara, at Gonzaga, at St. Mary's. It's not easy. It's not. Conference play is difficult. And no matter where you think you are, if you watch and you stay up late enough and you watch the WCC, and you and I have been doing this since 2010, partner. Like literally since 2010, you and I have been calling West Coast Conference basketball games. So maybe we're jaded because we see it all the time. I don't think we are, because I look at the tournament success. I look at the home color uniforms. I look at the multi-bids that they get on a consistent basis. And we get to know these players and watch these players, and we see kids get drafted from Pepperdine when Lorenzo Romar's team were struggling. Pepperdine was seeing kids get drafted in the NBA draft. You look at Santa Clara and their recent trend of having guys get drafted. San Francisco with Jonathan Mobo last year getting drafted. Like, they come from everywhere in this conference. This is a very, very good basketball conference with a rich tradition. And I hope that even in this changing landscape, that we protect the tradition of conferences like the WCC. Because, by the way, if you played in the Missouri Valley Conference, there's some tough games there, too, and some tough places that you're going to play. And if we lose that aspect of college basketball, I think we lose an essential aspect of what makes this sport so fantastic. And it's not just about 3 weeks in March. It's about the totality of the season and the opportunities to showcase these teams, their stories, like Austin Rapp, whose team is struggling, but he's one of the bright freshmen in all of college basketball, and we should celebrate that. And we should open up the opportunity for fans to get to know him and what he's about and just how talented he is. So I don't knock Oregon State or Washington State for where they're at currently in this conference. I think what they're finding out is this conference has been, over the last couple of years, by the way, just on par with the Pac-12, to be honest with you. It was. And especially at the top of the conference, when you look at the Zags and the Gales, they could go toe-to-toe with Arizona and whoever else was up at the top of the Pac-12 over the last couple of years. And we've seen that. And so I think that bodes well for this conference today. I think it will continue to bode well. And I think as long as there's a commitment there by these universities that they really want to excel in basketball, that this conference is going to have a lifeline and it's going to have its seat at the table. And it's going to be multi-bid year after year after year.
Good place to finish. We went a little overtime. Thanks to everybody for indulging us. Thanks to our sponsor, Hell of a Good Dip. Thanks to our guests, Joe Lunardi and Austin Rapp. And as a final thought, say hi to your son, Kellen. He's on the wall behind you for those of you who are watching the video version of the podcast. He's looking pretty studly there.
I mean, yeah, you just got to get him back off crutches. A broken foot, he ain't going to look like that.
Yeah, okay, fair point. But anyway, Sean, have a great week. Will you be in studio on Thursday when I'm in Spokane?
Dave, I will be in studio, and I hope that I get the opportunity to speak to you.
I can't wait. Talk to you next week.
All right, partner.